This is a place for you to share and gain insight on how to succeed and better serve more families in this rapidly changing marketplace. This is FDTV.
Hello everyone and welcome once again to another episode of FDTV. This is our anniversary episode and it seems kind of fitting to have Mr. Kris Seale, our president and CEO, here with us today. We're setting up a tradition here, I think, of in early in the year to kind of give some prognostication about what might be going on for the coming year in funeral industry.
Absolutely. Happy anniversary, by the way. Congratulations.
Thank you, sir.
It's good to get through a year, and I look forward to prognosticating. How's that? Okay? We'll see if we can make it through.
Is that a $5 word?
Yeah, I like it.
So, Kris, I know that given we'll just jump right into this right now. Given the current economic conditions and the highly competitive nature of the funeral industry, what are some things that you were starting to see, some writing on the wall maybe, some things that you're starting to see on the horizon for 2020?
You know, it's kind of crazy, Rob. I mean, I follow interest rates, and I follow them closely. And that's because we invest in a lot of fixed income type investments that pay us interest. So you go back a year ago when you and I had our conversation last year, we were looking at a United States Treasury bond, a 10-year United States Treasury bond, having a yield of 2.8%. Interest rates were kind of increasing at that time. And we even thought, should we raise the growth rate on our products? Because, I mean, seriously, it had raised or it had increased far beyond what we had expected by the end of the year. But then, fortunately, my actuary talked me out of that, and we said, let's take a look for the next several months and see what happens. So we did. We followed it for the next several months, and what we've seen is a steady decline in interest rates over 2019. So what has occurred now is that same 10-year United States Treasury bond, instead of yielding 2.8%, is now yielding 1.8%. So when you take a look at financial institutions or insurance companies like us and like other insurance companies that are in the prepaid funeral business, man, that's a significant reduction in your profit because you make your profit from how you invest the money. So that's a concern. And again, it's something we're going to have to look at hard if interest rates continue to stay down like they are today.
So, Kris, why do you watch that 10-year Treasury rate so close?
Yeah, that's a great question because a lot of people do ask me that question because the average length of time that a policy stays on the books here at Funeral Directors Life is about 10 years. So when that person dies, we want to make sure we have the funds available and the appropriate funds available. So taking a look at 10-year Treasury bonds is a good way for us to monitor what may happen in the future, because we've got to invest that money today and in order to get our return. And we know that in order to get that return that we need, we should look at probably 10 years since that follows the life of one of our policies.
So, Kris, what are some things that funeral homes can do when margins are so tight and when it's so competitive out there?
That's a great question, Rob, because the thing is for financial institutions or insurance companies like ours, our profit margins have been squeezed due to declining interest rates. But you take a look at funeral homes and their effect, the effect on them comes more from the changing funeral consumer. I mean, what we've seen is families and their preferences have changed, which have caused a squeeze in the profit margin for funeral homes. So that's something we monitor and we try to assist funeral homes with. And as we think through it, it's a lot like what we in the life insurance company, our life insurance company, are having to look at right now. So, I'm looking at three things. I'm looking at fixed cost. I'm seeing how things around our own office here that we can do to reduce fixed costs, such as really plug in more technology. I mean, I'm really focused on how we can establish better and more technology to improve efficiencies. To the same extent, maybe we can use some of the technology expertise that we have to help our funeral home clients also to have some better and more technology that they may need to improve their business. But also, secondly, for funeral homes, the ways that we can help and the things that they should take a look at, honestly, at the funeral home is their marketing and advertising and what they're spending on marketing and advertising. Because, as a funeral home, I'm seeing today, in today's world, you got to get more bang for your buck. That's something that I would encourage funeral homes to do. Take a hard look at the cost they're spending for advertising and marketing. And if they're spending none in advertising and marketing, they may want to spend some. But there's also other fixed costs that funeral homes can take a look at. In addition, what we're looking at doing here is how can we increase the average pre-need funeral contract. That's important for us because that helps us spread our costs out. If we're selling the same number of contracts, but we're selling a larger value, that actually helps us with our overhead, and it can help funeral homes as well. But the main thing that we're doing there, Rob, is we've been working with Alan Wolfelt to really come up with some training that we can provide to our pre-need funeral sales professionals. And by training them more on the value of a healing and meaningful funeral, by training them, we are seeing that the average contract is in fact increasing. For example, we worked diligently in 2018 and 2019 on our training programs for our pre-need people, and we've seen the effects of that. Get this, in 2019, we saw that the average pre-need funeral contract sold by a sales professional, that is a person who sells full-time, was $800 higher than a funeral director selling walk-in business. I mean, it was something that we felt was significant increase in the average pre-need value. So I think this should say something to funeral homes as well. If they're teaching their funeral directors on how to talk about the importance of having a meaningful and healing funeral and what the value of that is, truly bringing that value discussion to the family will be happy to pay a little bit more. So I think increasing that average contract is a second thing that funeral homes can do. The third thing that we see is how can we possibly help funeral homes establish more market share, or maybe even just maintain market share. If you're in a smaller market, sometimes it's important to maintain that market share. You don't want to see mom or dad moving off to a bigger city because they have more services and such, and then they have the funeral there in the bigger city, and the funeral home in a smaller town just gets an opening and closing of the grave. The important thing is how can we provide marketing and provide sales in a community like that or in a larger community. And the key is using an active sales program with sales professionals who can come in and market the product for the funeral home. We've seen a lot of success with that, Rob, and we just want to see funeral homes continue with that. It helps them to set the pace for the future. And the future is important when you're coming to the funeral business to ensure that that business is going to be there in the future.
And I think one thing that's probably important too is worth mentioning is what gets done with those funds when those prepaid funerals. What happens with that?
Yeah, that's a great point, because if you're selling more pre-need funerals, you're going to want to make sure that that money's invested wisely. And I tell people all the time, the money that comes into funeral directors' life on the sale of prepaid funeral contracts, it's not my money. It's not our company's money. It's the money of the policyholder or the person who's applied for that pre-need funeral plan. I say grandma's money. Okay, so it's grandma's money, and I'm the fiduciary of taking care of that money. And it's important 10 years from now for us to have that money available so that that family can get what they contracted for, to ensure that, and to ensure that the funeral home has growth that can help them to keep up with the prices, increased prices of funerals. So that's a key for us. So the important thing is taking a look at the strength and the stability of the company that you're working for. So if you're a funeral home, you want to take a hard look at the company. And what I mean by that is you probably should take a look at its financial statements, and then also take a hard look at how that company invests the money. That is so key, Rob. I can't emphasize that enough. And if a funeral home owner or funeral director doesn't really understand those financial statements or the investment strategy of a company, man, I would highly recommend that they take those financial statements and information to their accountant and let their accountant take a look at it and give them advice. It's just really important these days to ensure that you're with, as a funeral home, a company that's strong and stable and invests the money wisely. I think it's important too to work with a company that is focused on the funeral profession. A lot of insurance companies are simply in the business to provide a funding vehicle for that pre-need funeral. And I think it's important for funeral homes not to just take a look at the insurance company they're working with on their pre-need funeral program, but take a look at the company to see if they're really invested in the funeral profession.
Kris, thanks again for coming in and visiting with us again. Like I said, I hope this is going to be a tradition for us, and we'll be checking in with you throughout the year. And as always, we welcome your thoughts and your comments, your ideas, and your emails, because the things we discuss on this program are the things that we talk about with our funeral home clients and work through solutions with them every single day. Thanks for watching.